Thanks for joining, I think in today's webinar, Commercialising the Airport Offer. I'm Christy Finks, Managing Director, and I'll be co-presenting today with Catherine McCulloch.
Hi, I'm Finks Go-to-Market Manager.
So with over 100 people dialing in today, we're overwhelmed and we're really excited to kick this off. So we do want to make this as interactive as possible, but just keep in mind with the volume of attendees, if we don't get a chance to answer your question, we will definitely be following you up post the presentation. So keep the questions coming. So let's get going. Okay, so before we start, just to, we definitely wanted to provide as many live examples of the work that we've done with airports over the last 10 years. However, all numbers have been modified just to ensure confidentiality. Okay, so who is Think? So we've worked extensively over the aviation industry over the last 10 years for both regional and city-based airports. Okay, so Think's approach, where's it come from? We've co-created our tools and methodologies with over 2 million international and domestic travellers. But the great thing is we've been able to refine our approach and our strategy and our templates, working with and collaborating with internal stakeholders at airports. So that's anyone from commercial, ground transport, retail, and ICT. So we've been really fortunate to have that close connection and collaboration with yourself being our stakeholders. And today, in regards to what you'll be seeing, we're taking an overall airport lens. However, keep in mind the great thing about Think's approach is it's definitely scalable based on the size of airport, but then also to individual business unit level as well. So keep in mind if it's, we're not talking about your particular area or business unit, that it can be adapted to suit that particular lens. Okay. So just to provide an overview of our experience in growing Australia's airport, we've worked across Melbourne Airport, Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide and Cairns Airport, to name a few. We've informed, the great thing about taking business intelligence, we actually need it to be tangible. We take insights and we take research and we then, build tactical tools that have a commercial outcome. So you'll see here, even from a retail strategy point of view, as an example, it's anything about sort of tracking the psychology of how, a traveller or a customer segment moves through your airport. What brands do they want to see, down to that specific brand level? What's that shopper journey? How do we maximise dwell time? And then even taking it that next step further and giving you the tools and the information that you need to even take, this information out and put it in your retail tender creates a really good opportunity for you to have that two-way dialogue, with retailers and give you that edge and that business intelligence to say that you need to have, your brand within our airport.
It's a real selling point.
Okay. And then finally, just to finish off this particular section of tangible outcomes, we thought we'd show you some parking strategies that we've implemented as well. So honing down into, we have an overall airport segmentation, but then for parking, what are your opportunity segments? How do we drill down into that and identify those top 3 to 4 segments? And then for those top 3 to 4 segments, what's their price elasticity for certain products and services? And then how do we actually target these particular segments now that we know that that's your priority from a geo-mapping point of view, down to even product innovation of new products and services, and then tracking that sort of website journey if they're booking their parking online. So some really tangible examples of what we've done within the space, just a little bit of a snapshot before we get started. Okay, so why are we here? Let's just do a really quick recap on what we're covering today. Okay, so our 6 paramount techniques to take home, really all is about defining who the market is. Understanding your customer and your customer segments is paramount. Then doing a deep dive into understanding not only how they behave, their thoughts, their feelings, their attitudes, and then mapping their airport journey, so from start to finish, and not only just on airport, but also mapping their off-airport journey as well. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail shortly. And then, the key thing here, this is all about commercialisation. What is the opportunity? So we size and we value the segment, but then we say, okay, for this business area, this is your core opportunity segment. and we put it in the context of the population. From a size, this is where you are now, this is the future. And then overlaying that with experience. So as they're moving through your airport, what is their interaction with the journey touch points? Finishing all with, closing the loop between fantastic strategy, but then making sure that we take it to market. So that's a marketing and comms lens. We know working with airports, you guys move at such a rapid pace and you're doing fantastic things. We need to ensure that we're taking the traveller also on that journey, and letting them know what we're doing in a way that, is seamless, and you're sort of hitting them, at the right parts of the journey with the right message. Okay. So, again, a commercial blueprint. This is a one-pager. This is going to be your Bible that we'd like you to take away with you today. So it does sit down across, again, those 6 key areas. And this is a step-by-step guide at how we involve the customer at each stage of this journey, and how you build your customer-led strategy. So you'll see here that then that customer-led strategy flows into your go-to-market. So you'll see here those key points that sit under each of these areas that we'll be fleshing out in more detail today.
And that's really the great thing about this webinar, is that these are tools that we have developed over these 10 years, collaborating with some of the major airports in the country, big and small. So it really has come from the ground up and has really proven, these are your proof points, and this is something you can take away with you and easily integrate it day to day, and that's where the value sits. So we're really excited to bring this to the table and share with everyone today.
Okay, so let's start. The foundation is set. And what does that actually mean? When we start working with airports, a really key question that we do ask them, and it's a question that we need to all ask, even individually as a business, what is our overall business strategy? Do we have a business strategy, or is it, or a vision or a mission? What are our brand pillars? And these are really important, sometimes feel quite strategic documents, but it's important that we have an understanding of how we as a business are moving towards, this particular mission, and how we're aligning our day-to-day practices with our brand pillars. Because it's important that we see that synergy between strategy, experience, and then implementation. It's crucial that we have, a consistent message and a consistent voice across, each of these particular areas of the business. So taking strategy out of the boardroom and moving it into tactical day-to-day operations. So, if we work with airports, again, that have the luxury of having one of these strategic documents, but also we've worked with airports where we've sat down and we've started this roundtable discussion to say, well, who are we and what do we stand for? And let's make sure that once we identify that, we're always using that as our benchmark, moving forward with any sort of commercial opportunities to sort of create that real identity.
Mm-hmm. And what we've seen with working with these major airports across the country is that this is really the first step in removing those silos across the business. It's the first step forward in really commercializing the airport as a whole, as well as within those specific business units. So it's really essential as a starting point.
Exactly. And it's great to all get in the one room.
Yeah.
Okay, so who are our stakeholders? Again, another key question in commercialisation, and it's so important to ensure that when we talk about moving forward with a strategic document or again an initiative, that we have looked at our 4 stakeholder groups and ensured that we're talking the same language and we're getting that full 360-degree view of the airport brand. So it doesn't only just involve your travellers, but also B2B, community and your staff, all need to be, have this unique lens to identify commercial opportunities. What we see sometimes if we move forward with the traveller and we don't involve, for instance, our airline partners or hotels, we're not definitely getting, that real, opportunity that could present if we frame it up and we make sure that every movement that we take forward as an airport, if we're connecting our 4 stakeholder groups, we see that real, the opportunity come to life, and also other opportunities presenting, as a consequence. Mm-hmm. Okay, so who is your customer? Let's get started in really identifying the market landscape. Why is this important? When we first started working with airports 10 years ago, we would see, individual business areas coming in saying, oh, I would like to understand who the parking customer is. or we'd work with retail. Who is the retail customer? So what we have brought to the table is really that you have one customer. So we need to ensure that we're always speaking about the one customer navigating through different touch points of the airport. So you'll know now that each business area can be talking about the same customer, but obviously your areas of opportunity and prioritisation and how you target that particular customer will change based on their interaction at the airport. So again, it's really powerful to be able to have an understanding of your customer across the airport level. So when we talk boardroom level, we're always talking about the same customer. But then when we filter it down, we have that same level of customisation. So, for instance, car rental or food and beverage, again, may have very different focuses on how they would, use a customer segmentation. So again, it's taking an overall airport lens, but we're narrowing it down to ensuring that you can get that real customisation out of this piece. Okay, so don't try and read this writing, it's very small. But what we wanted to show you again, it's a Bible. This is a one-pager when we say, who is your customer? The fact that you can take, it in on one page when we say, let's look at our traveller population, for instance, either being domestic or international, and really say, okay, well, we've got 4 key segments that sit across the domestic traveller population. Now, the value of this is we know their size. They're 20%. They're that sort of new gen business traveller, for instance. We know a little bit about who they are from a life stage perspective, their age, their income, whether they travel with children, what's their purpose of travel. But, another key thing that we cover here when we set the market landscape from a commercial perspective is it's imperative that we do know their overall value from, either a domestic or international lens. So what are they? 20%, 30% of our domestic value. But then taking that next step further and saying, okay, well, of that domestic value, this is how much attributes to retail. This is how much attributes to parking. This is how much attributes, to other commercial areas of the business. So again, this is showing you once you actually do get that full lens of your segments on one page, you can then start, plotting that opportunity based on different commercial drivers. So, and then moving forward into then their travel behaviour and what they're experiencing at the airport. So again, that one beautiful a Bible, one pager to say we know our customer, because once we can actually size and value up our customers and we plot the opportunity, this then therefore makes more of a strategic lens in how we sort of, size up different commercial opportunities and how we take that forward for business case planning. Okay, so then getting down into, we know who our 4 segments are now, let's bring them to life. So we know we work in a very numbers-driven environment. Like we understand within aviation and research ourselves, we can get bogged down in the numbers. So what this is it's a great way to definitely get into the heads and the hearts of our travellers. And really, again, not only having that commercial rigour beside it to say we know that this is the size of the population and their value, but then how are they navigating through our airport? What are those particular influential touch points that we can actually improve their overall airport experience? And then again, looking at their airport spend. At the moment, they're only spending $23, but we do know of this particular size segment, only 51% are spending. So again, from a commercial viability point of view, we've still got 49% from a conversion perspective where we can definitely be focusing on how do we grow the size of the pie of this particular traveller segment.
Yeah, and these are the types of tools that we've seen, go really far in businesses. These are the one-pagers that get handed around at boardrooms to, have a look at these are our priority segments, and this is their deep dive. This is all the information we know about them. That can then guide future commercial initiatives based on all of that information that we know. So this is definitely a really important tool that we're proud to present and we're proud to put together.
And then moving on to the next slide, this is where we work with airports to ensure that the numbers that we present, we're connecting the customer into your transactional data. So again, I think what we find working with airports is that there's that real disconnect between sales data and revenue figures. So what this allows us to do is actually put a size of the traveller population back to these revenue figures based on their touch points and their spend, but then again taking it into, well, now we know who this traveller is and how they think and feel. So it's a really beautiful connection between revenue figures, behaviour, then through to, okay, how do we actually influence this particular market segment as well? So you'll see here we can do it anything but across the retail. We've got the category value right through to the dollar figure per passenger. So we can get that level of granularity based on working with, this particular technique and also transactional data that sits within your airport. So again, we find, having this element of revenue attached to understanding who your customer is really gives it that commercial focus rather than just saying, yep, great, this is what our travel looks like. Well, what next? And how do we then make sure that this has that real opportunity focus of, okay, well, if we're going to grow this segment, let's make sure it's the right segment. It's high value, there's big opportunity, and we know from a revenue perspective at the moment they're about 21% of our overall, domestic value. Okay, so we've spoken a lot about their behaviour and what they're currently doing, but the great thing about identifying commercial opportunities definitely comes from, well, what aren't they doing? When we talk about 51% of this particular segment isn't spending, why? Why aren't they spending? How can we get them to spend, and what are the gaps? So is it based on an experience? Is it based on the fact that they want to see sort of different products and service offers at the airport? Or is it even around the fact that they don't even know that these particular products and services exist? Again, we spoke about earlier working with airports that, have so many fantastic initiatives, but it's about how we can then communicate to that particular market segment of interest with the right tone, the right message, and at the right stage of the journey to ensure that we're maximising that commercial opportunity. Okay, so mapping the on and off airport journey. So, journey mapping, let's start with off airport activity, because quite traditionally working within this space, when we talked about the traveller, it all really was very airport focused. It was all sort of within the physical infrastructure of the airport. Now what we've devised over the last 10 years is, you are the gateway to the region, but also being the gateway, it's really imperative that you're working with your stakeholders to ensure that you're growing the region and you're sharing the same vision. So, and that these connections can happen anywhere from tourism, hotels, right through to, different activities that what is that major driver for them coming to your region and flying into your airport? That is really crucial to understand to help us map this journey and not only that, influence this really important part of the journey. So, and that's where creating a sense of place comes from. It can also seem like a little bit of a buzzword, like journey mapping does. But really, it is about creating the sense of place. Why are we here? It's about creating that seamless end-to-end experience of why someone's coming to your region that needs to be emulated in the airport to have that look and feel to really maximise that experience.
And what we've seen is that off-airport journey really does inform the on-airport journey. What people are after, what they're doing, what they're buying, what they want to see, their motivations for coming to your airport or coming to the region really inform what actually goes on within the airport and what they're after at those airport touch points. It's really important to connect those and to not just think, the journey begins and ends within the walls of the airport. It actually extends well beyond that. So it's so important to incorporate all of those stakeholders and take that all into consideration when we're putting together these initiatives and these action plans.
Yeah, great. So what does the traveller journey look like? And again, what Catherine was just saying, it really does, quite traditionally started when, in the four walls of the airport. So it started almost at ground transport and finished when they were departing the airport. But now when we look at the traveller journey, it's so much more complex. It starts from planning, and that planning phase between planning and them actually arriving at your airport is, such an area of influence. So, we've definitely, incorporated that into the journey mapping as it sits. And then what we do is we're mapping and having an understanding of how this particular segment of interest is navigating their way through this journey. What's their experience? What are their pain points? And also, what are they interacting with, or what's the opportunity and gaps that present based on this particular traveller segment. And the great thing about segmentation is we know that every journey for your traveller types is different. So even though we map this beautiful journey end to end, how people interact with these different touch points can vary significantly. So when we talk about journey mapping, and, I love a buzzword, as we all do, but so we wanted to take, what is commercial about journey mapping? And really for us, it's turning pain into gain. So what we found over the last 10 years is working with, we don't want to come to a segment and say, what do you think of this initiative? And they go, yeah, it's great. We actually want to make sure that we're working with airports and we're co-creating these pain points with your traveller to say, right, we've identified for this particular market segment, there's 6 or 7 key pain points. So what is the commercial action that we can actually deliver to alleviate some of these pain points? And that is what co-creation actually is. So it's not about pushing a product or service onto a traveller. It's about ensuring that the traveller tells us from their experience up what are the pain points, and then we work with airports to strategise how we can alleviate these pain points. So turning pain into gain is the commercial driver from a journey map. So again, it's taking that softness away for something that might seem a bit, what do we do with this, to then turning it into something really tangible.
I suppose with the journey maps as well, it allows you to see that seamless journey as we saw on the slide before, but as well, another important value add component of that is being able to then break it down by business unit and to really see how is this going to work for us at a more granular level, but then also from a bird's eye view as well. So it's a really useful tool.
Okay. So the path to purchase. So what we actually do here is we really identify that granular detail for each segment. So where does that pre-journey look like? What did they do? Did they log on to a particular website? What did they find? What were they searching for? These are all really crucial questions we need to understand about our traveller before they arrive at our airport. So then it's moving on to the on-airport behaviour. Okay, what were their spend touch points? Why didn't they buy anything at food and beverage? Retail shops, right through to off-airport. Did they interact with us on our website? Have they signed up to our Facebook page? What is that seamless end-to-end journey look like for each of these travellers? And then once we identify that, then where can we influence? So it's not just about having 92 touch points. It's about saying narrowing down for this particular market segment. We know that these are your 3 areas of influence, and this is how you're going to maximise your return on investment. Don't try and do everything for everyone. It's really about taking that narrow approach of who do we focus on, who's our core target market, and then how do we actually reach them across 8 different stages of the journey. So, you're creating that much more authentic experience by having that strategic approach, by journey mapping. Okay, so what we were touching on before, moving beyond the physical structure of the airport, planning, it's crucial. A proof point that we've just identified for one airport. And look, we understand that, budget's permitting, what can we do to actually influence, our traveller at this stage of the journey? Comes down to even just simple things like, well, it's great that we now know that a large proportion of our travellers are prepaying, their parking online. So what does that mean? It means we need to start owning that traveller at that touch point. So are we having two-way dialogue with them post them booking their parking? Are we educating them on when they arrive at the airport some other areas that, that we've enhanced to improve their overall experience? Can we hook them into different food and beverage or retail offers as a consequence? And it can start as something as simple as booking your parking to then create that dialogue. So, moving forward to then having an app that creates that seamless journey. We are definitely seeing a trend moving towards people bundling. It's the way we work now. It's seamless. I want to book my flight. I want to do this. So, what can we actually offer them in regards to creating a seamless journey? And it really all does start with that planning component.
Mm-hmm. And what we did find in the research is that planning, as you said, is that catchment. That's the beginning of the journey to, the acquisition, the retention, and the migration onto other products and services. As you said, sharing that information, what's going on at the airport, what other things might I be able to be interested in. We've seen a lot of airports not necessarily capitalizing on that really crucial moment to be commercial and to introduce them to new offers and things that they might, appreciate or they might actually spend money on.
Yeah, and that's right, and just educating them on things that are happening at the airport, really, giving giving, I suppose, communicating, changes that are happening at the airport as well. So it sometimes feels like once they arrive at the airport that's where this journey needs to begin. And it's definitely, with this journey mapping, we've identified a lot of commercial opportunities that exist, a long way before they actually arrive at the airport. But they're also keeping in mind once they do arrive at the airport, making sure that we're keeping, an understanding of how they're navigating through these touch points and where you can then influence and keep that dialogue happening with them. Okay, so as we said, digital, when we spoke about even prepay booking your parking online, we do know that digital infrastructure, is really crucial in creating a seamless experience. We could talk another 10 hours on digital. It's a beast of its own, but really we do know that the digital infrastructure is a really important part of, providing that seamless experience, and then also moving airports into, again, beyond that physical infrastructure and start communicating and treating your travellers as their customers or people that enter your airport. You are a brand. Another very, controversial, evolution that we've been on with a lot of airports is you are, you have the not even the luxury, but, it's fantastic that you have so many travellers walking in and out of your doors every day. You need to start operating on a brand and to be a brand to deliver on an experience. But, again, from a digital touchpoint perspective, even if you don't have the app, it's more around if they're logging onto your website. If they're at airport, what do those digital touch points currently look like? What do they look like at your airport at the moment? And then how do we make sure that there's synergy between each of these digital touch points to create, again, that seamless experience? Okay, and interestingly, building, this spend footprint, not only just for your region, but across Australia. We know that working within aviation, you're all a fairly close bunch. And we're really fortunate to definitely be able to have referrals and meet not only individual airports, but then collaborate with groups as well. So the key thing about the spend footprint, it takes it not only, again, from an airport lens, but it moves it into a regional lens, and then moving it across. Well, we know when, especially international and domestic travellers as well, when they're travelling through our airport, that they may be travelling on to other areas of Australia. So how do we create that footprint and put a value on it, not only for, the business unit, the airport, the region, and then Australia. So this then becomes a really powerful stuff for moving forward from an overall, strategy perspective. Okay, so opportunity. Where can we make impact? It's always the key question when it comes down to commercialisation. What we spoke about before, it's key in really understanding for our customer segments, who's interacting across what touch point within the airport journey. And then plotting these particular touch points, we can, really look at that conversion to say, okay, for this particular segment, only, for instance, 31% are interacting with our digital platforms. Again, that shows that big opportunity for digital from a conversion perspective on how we can grow this size of the pie. And when we come down to looking at these conversion numbers, it really is, it helps us with our business case planning to say, well, we know that there's real value in growing this segment. There's real opportunity, for 5 or 6% to get that value and what that would look like when we're growing that size of the pie. And then even taking this across a terminal lens. So, for instance, we just showed you an earlier slide that looked at digital retail parking. So what is the opportunity for that particular customer segment or traveller segment? And this is then looking at, all right, well, let's look at an overall terminal lens. So if we were to look at, digital retail parking, food and beverage across the terminal, what is our opportunity from a commercial perspective? Is this where we should be investing? Or how do we, what is the size of prize in growing this particular terminal or, as I said, traveller segment?
And the thing with this kind of tool is it can be broken down by carrier as well. So it's not just limited to the terminal. It can be by carrier, so we can really get that strategic information at different touch points throughout that airport to get that real granular business information.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And as I sort of touched on earlier when we first started, the lens of how you can definitely use your data, if it is connected and we are mapping that journey, it can really take any lens of that commercial interest at this time. It can be planning, it can be terminal. It really has such wide application. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the great thing about this approach is, even if we sort of land on, you have 8 segments for the airport in general. What we need to, I suppose what we've developed over time is we know the fact that each business area needs to have an understanding of who are my customers, what is their size, what is their value specific to my business unit. Mm-hmm. And again, what this approach allows you to do is not only understand who are those airport, traveller segments, but then, okay, for instance, what is the viable segments across, for instance, parking or retail, and then we map those particular segments to identify, okay, this is your size, and these are your segments, and this is how we're going to target them. So, and you'll see across each of the business units how these, I suppose, opportunity segments change. So what could be an opportunity segment for parking may very well be different for retail. Or what we might see is we might share some commonalities, and that's the power of definitely looking at an overall segmentation model, is then we start sharing the knowledge of this particular traveller. We know they're big on parking, we know they're big on retail. Let's work together and really, create some synergy in our airport offer, in our marketing, in our comms that doesn't feel siloed. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then co-creating service initiatives. So as I spoke about before, when we talk about pains and gains, this is a really great tool that we talk about. Okay, great. Now that we know who our traveller segments are, we know who our priority segment is. Right. So let's co-create with them. What's a particular service initiative or gap that we feel could be bridged for this particular traveller experience? So that then comes down to co-creating a service initiative with them, or even like testing some service initiatives. But it comes down to then really understanding what that looks like for them on their traveller experience, and then why do we need this service initiative? But then interestingly, what would they be willing to pay for this particular service initiative? So let's not go out and put a price point on something that isn't actually co-created from a traveller. We know when we actually go back and, from previous research, and I'm sure we've all been there, yes, we want this, yes, yeah, everyone wants everything. But when we actually start to talk about, well, what are you willing to pay for it? And then we overlay that with what part of the journey, I suppose, is this service initiative or product relative to, we can really then strategically say, okay, well, is this a priority for this particular segment or not? And then looking at that price point, is it feasible or viable to move forward?
Yeah, and the great thing about testing these service initiatives is not only does it validate some things that you might already have in place to show you how different segments are indexing as to whether or not that's something they are actually after, but it also shows you some new initiatives and new revenue streams that the airport can capitalize on that they might not have thought about before, but because it's come up through customer research, that's a new initiative that they can potentially go forward with. And it comes down to making educated business decisions rather than, thinking blue sky and just hoping it sticks. It's about really looking at what customers are actually saying, looking at what they would be willing to pay for these service initiatives, and then taking that forward and really just taking that strategic and really educated approach rather than guesswork.
Fantastic. Yep. So I've just got a question that's come through. Thanks for the feedback. So what social media platforms do you find passengers tend to interact most with airports? Is it the website, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc.? And that's a really great question. So what we found, and if you actually go back to who are our key stakeholders here on that initial slide, this then shows you the power of a social media platform and its applicability to your different stakeholder groups at times. So I'm sure that you'll definitely see a big influx now of airports communicating via LinkedIn. That's been a really a great platform to definitely be talking to our business travellers. And so on, moving into then social media. Social media is a great platform. Once you're connecting or you've got your travellers at your airport, getting them to participate in a prize or, loading photos, really getting social, once they're sort of within your airport. But also then direct platforms as well. So if they're booking something from you, sending that direct mail. We're definitely seeing, there's so much opportunity for airports, again, to operate like a brand. So think about, the different market segments and the placement of your digital media strategy and how you can actually target your different stakeholders, with different messages. But also those different messages still need to tie back into your overall brand value. So that's a great question. And again, it comes down to that, customization and personalisation of who are we talking to, at what part of the journey, and then how do we share that message. Okay, so again, perfect
Great segue.
Yep.
Thank you.
Personalisation is key. So, the fact, we talk about, customer segments and, one pages and, strategy documents. But now that we actually know who our priority segment is, now how do we personalise the experience? This is curation and personalisation is key. And even getting back to that great question about social media and different platforms, personalisation within the experience really ensures that you're delivering messages that resonate, with your traveller. And this can even happen when we talk about resonation right down to that brand level. So now that we know who our priority segment is, what brands do they want to see when they walk through the airport? And we know that once we start aligning, that gap and that need with the right traveller segment, the direct impact on sales is phenomenal. So we've had the great experience of working with a lot of airports in helping guide, not only a digital and a retail transformation right from the ground up. What does that look and feel need to be when I arrive at the airport? Right down to, what retailers do I actually want to see? Who do I want to buy my coffee from? Who do I want to buy my makeup from? All of these key questions come down to personalising that experience for the right traveller segment who's walking through that terminal. Okay, so let's talk about experience. Again, I feel experience is something that can feel very intangible. So let's move experience away from just being a number or a mean score. So what do we do with a 5.2 score? And let's start thinking about it like we're a brand. So what we wanted to show you here is an example of a recent output that we've delivered for one of our airports that profiles, key dimensions of the traveller experience across different market segments. So you can see there, even just based on this slide, the variation in traveller experience based on the different, that traveller segment. So again, it's not about being all things to everyone, but it's a great way to definitely show you, what travellers are having a positive experience versus a less positive experience. And really then nailing it down to, okay, now I know who that traveller is, how do we alleviate those pain points? So, and you'll see here we operate on anything below sort of that 7 benchmark as a less positive experience. But again, it's not about actioning everything for everybody. And we'll move on to the next slide that shows you. It's really important to determine for that, traveller segment that now who is your core priority. And we look into that segment. What are those airport experience touch points that are the most influential in their journey? So, for instance, for our core segment now, we know that it's retail, baggage reclaim. It could be parking. They're their top 3, experience drivers. So let's not go in and start investing time and effort into other experienced drivers that we know don't have that level of influence to maximise, this particular segment's time at the airport. So again, it's giving you that really tailored approach to say, now I know where they land on experience based on, plotting that against different market segments. But now I'll just go in and have a look at my top 3 priorities for this particular traveller segment. How am I scoring there? And now I know, how I'm actually going to reach out to this particular traveller segment to alleviate that particular pain point or gap, because you know who they are. So it's not just hiding behind that mean score of 6.4. This is now a real person. It's a traveller. We understand their size. We understand, and also their priority of how they want their experience to be at the airport.
And the great thing is as well, we've worked with airports and we've used these tools to then go back and measure using that sliding scale that we just saw previously to go in and see, okay, now that we've made these adjustments, how are we ranking now? How do travelers now rate their experience at each and every touch point, and to see how that experience has then changed since new initiatives were taken on board. And it really just provides that benchmark to see, okay, how are we going? Yeah.
Great. So we've got another great question that's come through in the referencing of value. So when we talk about value at an airport, great question. So are we talking about this as a percentage of total airport revenue? Great question. So what we do is we actually want to have that wide appeal across not only talking about the total airport revenue, and that can be in the form of a percentage or your billions of dollars, but it also comes back to then the individual segment. So of those that are spending, what is their average spend? So we talk about value. That can be at $1 price point. So on average, when that segment arrives at your airport, we know they spend across all of the airport touch points an average of $22, versus then we take it that one step further and we talk about the value of what they're spending on food and beverage. That can be $4. But what we need to ensure that this does is there's this incremental, cost per spend or average spend on, for instance, food and beverage, and then all of their other touch points adds up to the total value of that particular segment, which then feeds into their percentage of the total revenue figures. So it's a really beautiful relationship between, those three connections. So when we talk value, it is not only at an overall airport revenue perspective, right down to on average when I'm at the airport and I'm this particular segment, I spend on average X amount of dollars. Okay, so bringing it all together. So we're coming towards the end of our presentation. So we've talked a lot about data, bringing it all together, understanding our customers, strategy. But, a really key thing that working with airports over the last 10 years is that we've identified is, we need to ensure that we're bringing, turning these beautiful customer-led insights into marketing and implementation strategies. Again, we've worked with airports that we know. Sometimes we go out and we test initiatives, and the airports say, "Oh, but we're doing that. Why? But we're doing that. Why don't they know about that?" And that really all comes down to your marketing and comms, and how we actually can use marketing and comms very strategically across different platforms to be talking to the right segments. Okay, let's talk about go-to-market, because really it's all about that tangibility of, how we actually take these insights and we take it to market. So first and foremost, it's about focusing on the right traveller. So now we've got our fantastic, one-pager on who our international and domestic travellers are, but it's really important to future-proof your strategy. So it starts with, okay, where has this segment been in the last 5 years? Where will they be in the next, past of 10 years? Where will they be in the next 5 years? And also, where will they be in the next 10? So the forecasting allows us to not only look at population growth, and also using a mixture of ABS and tourism-based data, but then also revenue figures as well to project, what is the size of this prize now in the next 10 years. We know, obviously, from an infrastructure perspective, it's not just focusing on the now. We need to be future-proofing, where we're heading in the next 10 years. So again, from a business case and planning perspective, this type of future-proofing is really important for airports. So then turning our insights into a customer-led action plan. So we thought we'd just quickly touch on, when we talk about an action plan, what are the 4 fundamental things that you need to ensure that you're answering in your action plan? So first and foremost, we start with the business problem. This business problem has been shaped by your traveller. So this is coming through all of the customer-led information that you've been provided. So, and that information usually, stems from really getting a holistic understanding of what is that overall pain point for the business that we turn then into a business problem. And then we actually work out, okay, well, how do we change the game? So what does that look like from an actionability point of view? And then moving it into what particular areas or business, touch points need to be focusing on this. Is it one particular business unit, or is it a cost sharing opportunity for the airport to be looking at how we can alleviate or, move forward with this action plan? And then, of course, most importantly, who is the segment of focus here? So this isn't a blanket approach. Your action plan, your 4th question to answer is, who is the particular traveller segment that we'll be focusing on? for this business problem, because again, we can take that back to the board or our business case and say, we know that this is the size, this is the value, and if we can alleviate this problem from a projection point of view, this is the overall commercial value. So super powerful stuff. And what we want to show you is that building action plans and strategy and comms really does have to start with the customer. Mm-hmm. So the customer builds these frameworks. And this is the beautiful relationship and the journey that we go on in taking insights and turning them to very tangible outcomes. Mm-hmm. And then we've got our little activation checklist. So don't feel overwhelmed. I feel if it's not clear enough to have on one page with an order of priority from 1 to 5, 1 to 10, you've really got to break it down. Keep it simple. And again, with the 4 fundamental questions you need to answer for your action plan, then you have your checklist on how you actually move forward with that.
This is actually a really fundamental tool that we've developed with one of the major airports in the state. Is really just around, now that we know what we know, it was a massive piece of research, and really the burning question at the end of the day from the executives who, no one has time to go through an entire report, so you kind of just need that boiled down into those priority action items. And this is just that one pager that we can take and pass around and go, right, now that we know what we know, what do we have to do? So that's bringing everything together, all of the insights, all of the pain points, the business problems, and associating that with obviously that potential, projection, that revenue associated, and just putting it on one page in terms of actual tangible priority action items. So it's been something that we've developed, and that's been really useful across the board.
Yeah, and it's key to note too that when we talk about a business problem, it doesn't this doesn't necessarily need to be sitting in a particular business unit. This comes from the customer, or the traveller, and this actual order of priority or action point can be shared across the business. So, we need to be keeping it in the lens of the traveller, and then moving it through into, or how do we as a business then action this particular business problem. So again, keeping it very centred within the customer is paramount for actionability. Mm-hmm. Okay, so closing the loop. So this is actually moving into our brand positioning and comms strategy. So again, taking insights and moving them into a tangible document. And not only that, importantly, making sure that we're connecting everything that we're doing from an operational, commercial, food and beverage, perspective into marketing and communication. So let's make sure that we're, we've got that flow through effect, and where we're having that regular dialogue coming from the traveller right through up into, okay, well, let's close this loop and action, this information.
Right. So what is go-to-market? We have been throwing around some buzzwords, but it's important to know that they actually have some real foundation. So go-to-market is that final piece of the puzzle. It starts with your customer, just like everything else that we've talked about today. So it is, that icing on the cake, bringing everything together, closing that loop. As we mentioned, there's so many airports who, they do this research and they go out on these great initiatives and it's all customer-led and it's all great. But as you said before, no one knows about it. So it's really about bringing that all together and ensuring that you have a scientific approach to communicating that consistent message across the airport at every touch point, so that you're not leaving behind any stakeholders at all. So, as we can see on the slide, this is an example of the work that we've done in the past, the types of insights that we actually use to feed in and funnel into that brand messaging, to those communication pieces that are actually going to land well with the right people. So it's about that right message to the right segment at the right time on the right channel. So, we use that segmentation data. We look at actual verbatim on things that they've said that they want to see at the airport, brands that they want to see, and we use all that to create those messages. So you're really considered when it comes to your communication with your core customers. And again, not trying to be everything to everyone, rather taking a targeted approach to ensure that that lands well and that you actually have some ROI on it. So, this is definitely something that we stand by, is using that scientific approach rather than taking the guesswork out of it. It's just really kind of using those insights as the anchor, as that foundation to drive your communications. And the next piece of that is telling the story. So it's how do we get that story out to our stakeholders in a way that's going to resonate, and in a way, as you mentioned before, that encapsulates the brand. So we want to make sure that we're not going off on tangents talking about things that certain stakeholders want to see, but we're doing that while incorporating our brand pillars, our mission, our vision as a business. So taking what we talked about at the beginning and really taking that 360 approach to take into consideration, you know, how do our B2B stakeholders view our brand? What pillars do we need to realign with them, and how are we going to incorporate that into our communications? How does the community stakeholder view us? What are some of their gaps, and what are they feeling about our brand, and where can we sort of make amends there? So it's about going out to those stakeholders that we saw before, having that 360 approach, uncovering where those gaps and opportunities are. And then as you can see on the slide, this is a tactical tool that we've developed to bring that all together. So we have the value to reinforce, we have the value to realign, and then we have the key messages, you know, the tone, and that's all getting really specific to that stakeholder group to ensure that we're actually delivering the right message and saying the right thing, you know, to really have that sort of overall consistency, and to bring, really it's just about bringing the stakeholders on the journey with us when we're going out and doing these great initiatives and making these great changes across the airport, across all different touch points. It's bringing those stakeholders on the journey. And the way that we do that is something that we've uncovered in past work that we've done with some major airports, is we use mechanisms. So rather than, you know, airports kind of going, oh, we've done this and that, sometimes it you know, it doesn't land as well. So what you do is you use 4 key mechanisms that we've developed to actually tell that story for you and to pull at those heartstrings and those key content points that your stakeholders have actually said that they want you to hit. So, you know, there's people, so that's through testimonials. Nothing is more powerful than a testimonial, you know, coming from the horse's mouth. You know, that comes down to
a traveller, and someone at the airport, staff,
employees, taking them into consideration as well. That sends a really powerful message rather than just coming from, you know,
the tone at the airport.
Yeah, it comes from the bottom up, and it incorporates the tone for that specific stakeholder group. You know, we have produce as well. So, you know, it's about things that grow in the region. It's about, you know, different retailers, different brands that you're proud to have in the region and you're proud to support as well. So that really just shows that interconnectivity between yourselves and the stakeholders outside of the airport that contribute to that overall economy as well.
Yeah, and also creating that sense of place.
Absolutely.
You know, it can be so easily done through your local producers and, you know, obviously brands and retailers that sit within your region.
And we've uncovered that is something that many travelers want to see. They want to see local. They want the airport to be the advocate, not just for the airport, you know, themselves, but for the region as a whole. They want to see it reflected within the space, and that comes down to produce as well as place, having that sense of place. What's special about your airport and the region that it's situated in, bringing that into the airport and bringing that into the storytelling mechanism, as well as partnerships. It's a huge opportunity to leverage partnerships. Airports are, you know, as we said before, the lifeblood of the region, and there's so many businesses that rely so heavily on the airport to drive the economy, you know, to employ people, to bring people in the region, to send them out, and, you know, those partnerships are something that's really integral to your communication strategy, because, you know, you don't need to do all the heavy lifting. Your partnerships can help you do that and help deliver that brand message to your stakeholders in a way that is really authentic. Through those really considered relationships with other stakeholders.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic point.
Yeah.
And look, and we do know there's so many fantastic things happening within airports. And as Catherine was just raising that, allowing these mechanisms to tell your story, you know, really increases that authenticity, but as well as, you know, it gives you that creativity and that leverage to not just be thinking, well, what do we talk about? How do we create a brand? You know, again, we working with airports over the last 10 years, the emotional element and, again, the connection that you have with each of your stakeholders is phenomenal. So to be able to tell these stories through these mechanisms gives it a real sense of, as I said, authenticity, but heart, you know, that see some really beautiful stories unfold. So again, it just, you know, this is that connection between how do we talk about marketing and comms in a scientific way, but then tell it through a mechanism that allows it to feel authentic and newsworthy. At the end of the day, what is it things that people want to read about and understand? But again, it really raises your brand profile for people to really understand the great things that you're doing within your communities and working with your stakeholders.
It really gives your initiatives some legs, and it's been really great because this is a tool that, you know, we've delivered to major airports, and they've come back and told us this has changed the way that we work day to day.
Yep.
You know, and so that's the proof point is, you know, these actual one-pagers and these tools that we've developed that have that real rigor and that scientific background, they've come to us and said, you know, you've made my job so much easier.
Yeah. And also I think that what it does is it keeps that consistent messaging and, again, that continuity across the entire airport. So it's not as if, you know, parking's off doing messaging in one area and retail's doing another. It really is a planned approach to ensure that we know the mechanisms that we're going to be using to be telling these stories, but it all also has to align back to, well, what's our brand pillars, and, you know, so it keeps it really, you know, on brand, and it shows that we're working towards our overall strategic vision, and really that is our benchmark for marketing and comms. It's just not someone sitting there saying, well, you know, I want to be telling some, you know, go out and what do we write about this week, or doing a plan with your advertising agency. This is coming from, again, that really customer-led approach into creating these particular area or content points of interest, and then telling it through a mechanism that we know actually will work and brings that emotional connection.
Yeah, that's right.
Fantastic.
Great.
Okay. So final note, you know, we've loved having you join our webinar today. We've had so many questions flowing through as we speak. So apologies we didn't get a chance to answer all of them, but we will be touching base with each individual post this presentation. And please, you know, do feel if there's anything that we've discussed today that you'd love to follow up on, you know, we'd love to definitely chat. So let's do a recap. Our final takeaway. Think like a brand. Yep, that's where we're at. You know, we can't deliver on an experience if we're not a brand. And for a brand, you know, you need to operate with those specific brand value guidelines, mission. You know, you've got a consistent message. Like, who are you, and what does that? What does your brand experience look like? So, and then, you know, a really important point that we always, you know, say to our airports, you know, let's take the guesswork out of our decision making. And it's not necessarily guesswork. It sounds a bit light on when we say that, but really having a customer-led strategy really does, you know, alleviate, you know, I suppose the risk of it potentially failing. So we know that they're definitely based on a sizing of value and opportunity matrix, and then a gap, that they're definitely, you know, it gives your particular commercial opportunities, you know, its best opportunity, you know, for success. And really that's what we're here to do, to set our airports up for success and use their travellers and their customers as that sort of sounding board. So next steps, post here, stay tuned. Really, we did talk a lot about creating that seamless experience, and that digital really is that vehicle that allows this to happen. So we actually we will be following up post this webinar with a digital, you know, sort of an ICT approach, digital transformation. So stay tuned. But really, we need to ensure that we're having that two-way dialogue with our travellers, you know, point by point, and giving you that real opportunity to maximise when they're interacting with that touch point, what that might look like from a digital perspective as well. So stay tuned. Loved having you all join us today. And again, thanks for all the questions, and apologies we didn't get a chance to cover them today, but it's been, you know, fantastic having you here.
And we do have our contact information on the back slide. So if there's anything, you know, post today that you'd like to know, any more information you want us to touch on, any further questions that you have, we're more than happy to have a conversation. And that just allows us to give you some really personalized feedback and information. So definitely happy to have a chat.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, Rhonda, have a great day. And I hope you had some lunch whilst we're lunching and learning. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye.